you, Osmany and Cecilia, for giving me the opportunity to present some personal views on the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the global health governance in times of COVID-19. I'm very pleased to present some arguments and findings I propose in the long policy paper that I drafted for the think tank Terra Nova, a French think tank, which is also co-branded by another French think tank called Global Health 2030. My presentation will focus on 6 main proposals for reforming the WHO after it has been highly criticized for the inefficiency of its response to the crisis. Interesting because this note is targeting decision makers rather than researchers. So it's a normative paper which has some proposals that I would like to present now. Let's come back to the crisis we are living right now. It has been triggered by an agent, a pathogenic agent, and it has driven to a classic example of the difficulties of multilateralism. It shows the extreme difficulty of the UN system in fulfilling its mission of prevention and response of collective risk. Over the last 3 decades, we had 5 great epidemics, important epidemics, and in each of them, the WHO has been regularly criticized and under fire. Politicians and observers frequently underline, its failures, its gaps, its weaknesses to fulfill its mission of coordinating international responses. So one of the main arguments I try to defend in the policy note is that many of the WHO's challenges do not stem from internal deficiencies. Of course, there are some, and I will address some of them, but rather results from the lack of political support and political engagement that clearly weaken the authority and the legitimacy of the UN organization. As you know, like any other intergovernmental agency, the WHO has no power other than the one granted by its own member states, especially in crisis situations. And on the one hand, you all know that the WHO can rely on a legal instrument to respond to emergency crisis. It is called the International Health Regulation. But on the other side, what we can observe from facts is that the Geneva-based organization cannot act in practice without the full cooperation of states over which it has no coercive power. So can the WHO be exempted from criticism? Of course not. I told you, and Leslie just a few minutes ago mentioned this. The UN organizations show their limits in times of crisis. And for WHO, there's a long list of grievances, such as the lack of leadership by the Director General, weak financial resources, the dependency on donors, especially the big donors, the delays in allocating funds, also bureaucratic management of programs, the low flexibility and the low responsiveness in front of emergencies, and also internal rivalries and politicization of discussions that should be only scientific but are still political. So the COVID-19 showed these gaps. We all know that there were some delays in sending an international alert at the beginning of the crisis. We also know that there was a difficulty in exerting sufficient pressure from the Director General on the Chinese government. There was a lack of capacity of the WHO expert mission that was sent in China in January. There was some challenging monitoring the epidemic. And last but not least, there was also a lack of capacity to provide leadership to embark all countries in a coordinated response. When we are faced with this, all these criticism, what can we do to improve the global health governance so that we have international organizations that can serve the interests of the countries and serve the protection of the health of the population. I would like to focus on 6 governance reform proposals that could restore WHO's leadership in global health governance. And I do not limit myself to the role of WHO in health emergencies, but also I would like to address the regular activities of the organization, those that are performed on a daily basis in times of calm, I could say. The final idea is to rebuild WHO's authority over what it does the best. It is the production and the dissemination of knowledge, promoting a universal approach to health. So the first proposal of the note is about strengthening the international health regulation. This is the legal instruments that the WHO uses in times of health emergencies. These instruments has been revised already in early 2000 years 2000 to strengthen states' obligation to track and report emerging health risk arising in their territory. And this revision of the international health regulation has also given more power to the WHO Secretariat to coordinate the response to the crisis and to declare a public health emergency of international concern. However, what we could see in the management of the COVID-19 is that the WHO depends too much and still on the good faith of governments, on their willingness to share reliable and transparent information, and to host surveillance or evaluation missions under conditions that they do control. My proposal here is that we should revise the international health regulation another time to tie the conduct of health emergency response to the principle of collective security. And this is possible. The UN Security Council since the early 2000s has recognized health as a major security issue in various resolutions. And nothing prevents WHO from being granted a mandate comparable to that of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, to carry out binding inspection activities in countries, in states, to verify that their compliance with their international obligation. So to prevent future pandemics, it is essential that WHO to be granted the capacity to lead, to conduct mandatory and no longer optional inspection visits, and in the event of a clear breach of the international health regulation, the WHO should be able to refer the matter to the UN Security Council, like the IAEA, and then the Security Council could take the necessary measures to compel a state that do not cooperate to fully respond to its obligation. The second proposal I tried to address in the note is about reducing WHO's financial dependence on voluntary contributions. As you know, the budget is, of any UN agency is quite complex, but concerning the WHO, during the last 30 years, we had an important shift. And there had been a budget erosion as a result of the zero nominal growth policy that was decided in the mid-90s, a budgetary erosion of assessed contributions. What we call assessed contributions, they are the compulsory contributions paid annually by the member states. And to compensate this budgetary erosion, WHO increased the level and also the donors, increased the evolution, the growth of voluntary contributions, both from public and from private donors. These voluntary contributions are conditional. Most of them are being earmarked for specific programs and for specific sets, a specific period of time. And what we can see, if we see the last 40 years, that the regular budget made of assessed contributions was 80% of the budget in the mid 70s. 40 years after, now the voluntary contributions are 80% of the budget. So these contributions results in many problems and have many negative consequences, because it affects the stability and the predictability of contributions, as donors may certainly redirect the contribution, reduce it, or withdraw it, and creating financial cuts. And that has severely limited the WHO response to the Ebola crisis last time. These voluntary contributions also oblige the WHO to constantly align its programs to the priorities of the donors, and the donors may change, and the WHO may have to change its priorities. And thirdly, these voluntary contributions also force WHO department to on a regular basis to devote most of their time to fundraising, rather than focusing on their mission, which is to monitor, to collect information, to do research analysis, and to do some technical assistance. The most important part of these financial new conditions is that now WHO is dependent on contributions from private donors. The level of private donors has constantly been raised, and now there is no alternative but to resort to funding sources from international philanthropy, from public-private alliances, from pharmaceutical companies. And of course, this is a problem because WHO is following a public policy, not private interest. For example, the Gates Foundation alone was the second largest net voluntary contributor during the period 2018-2019. So the second private contributor to WHO, the second contributor is private. So my proposal would be to restore a larger share of non-earmarked contribution to WHO, at least 50% of the budget, so that the WHO would be able to have more stability and more predictability in addressing its own priorities. The proposal number 3, it's about the problem of compartmentalization, stratification within the organization. And this is an internal issue that is quite critical and has been addressed several times by many observers. There is, for a long time, a great problem of authority of the Director General within his or her own organization. To a large extent, this question of authority are associated with government support, but not only government support. There is also inside the organization a problem associated with the regionalized structure of the organization. WHO is the only UN entity that is structured around 6 powerful regional offices. And this is a major impediment to institutional effectiveness, to such an extent that, the Lancet journal recently referred to the existence of 7 WHOs, the Secretariat and the 6 regional offices. What is the problem here? The problem is that a special feature of this organization is that the regional directors are elected by governments of the region they do cover. They have their own budget. They have full authority on their staff, and they can even play a key role on the appointment of national WHO representatives. It means that they have a double allegiance. They are placed under the authority of the Director General, who has not selected them, and at the same time, they are constantly tempted to meet the expectations of the states of the region, the government that have endorsed them by election, and that will decide on the renewal of their term of office. Therefore, I would recommend, and that's the proposal three, that the regional directors should be chosen by the WHO Director General and no longer be appointed by the ministers of health of the region. The proposal number 4 is about creating or building what I would call an Ipcc for global health. As you know, one key vocation of WHO is to do knowledge building, knowledge sharing, and norm setting. And to fulfill this mandate, the organization has some specialist staff with high scientific background. They have now chief scientists, similar to the chief economists of international financial institutions. They even have now a division for research. And also they work with independent panels and committees that elaborates reports that serve as basis for WHO policy guidelines. But WHO still faces increasing challenging in fulfilling its normative activity, especially in the new extremely complex international research environment, where you have now multiple private actors that go global, that are playing a leading role in the production and in the dissemination of health research, health data, and health information. And just take the example of the Johns Hopkins University that played a major role in providing health data during the COVID-19 crisis. What would be the interest of transferring the Ipcc model, which is for climate change, in the global health governance? As you know, for climate change, you have the Ipcc, which is the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. And the great legitimacy of the Ipcc comes from the fact that it provides substantive work that is carried out by independent working groups that use contradictory debates and peer review methods. And these groups has full control over the production of knowledge that they do provide. If we would transpose this system to the WHO and mix it with the WHO system, we could have a more open governance model, giving more responsibility to scientific working groups working under what we could call an intergovernmental panel on global health. And this would lead to three pillars inside UNESCO. You would have a political pillar with the World Health Assembly and the Executive Board that would adopt the global health strategy of the WHO. You would have a technical pillar with the Director General, the Secretariat, and country offices. And you would have a scientific pillar with the Intergovernmental Panel for Global Health. This would have a virtue. It would be highly decentralized worldwide, linked to most national research structures, and we would be far better connected to research networks, civil society, cities, and local communities in the countries. I would go very fast for the last two proposals, since I think I'm now on 19 minutes. The proposal number 5 is to strengthen the role of non-state participation in the governance of WHO, taking into consideration that now non-state actors are major health actors in the global health governance. So it's necessary now to give them a role within the institution. And I think it would be interesting to establish a third committee within the World Health Assembly. This idea of having a third committee has been exposed 10 years ago by various analysts and researchers, and it has been abandoned. Creating such a committee would allow room for the stakeholders and partners of WHO to be able to provide proposals to the General Assembly of WHO without competing between themselves, without practicing lobbying practices, always taxes that are always still the fact at WHO. And the last proposal, and sorry I'm a little bit long, but I will finish in a very short notice, is to improve and go further into the One Health approach that is striving to link the human health, the animal health, and the environmental health into one global framework. What I could say is that WHO has played a pivotal role in developing the One Health approach, which is essential to respond to epidemics, mostly of them originating in animal diseases and wildlife. However, the One Health approach is still very poorly implemented, and I would strongly advise a large reform of the health governance that would take into consideration climate change issues, biodiversity, urban development, and of course, any environmental issues. For that, we should have a large, high-level commission to be able to conduct an evaluation and a prospective study, such as the Brundtland Commission that was held in the late 80s to bring environmental issues into development thinking. And this commission would be in charge of giving some inspiration about a new kind of governance associating animal health, environmental health, and human health. Thank you very much. I would like to just to conclude that you understood that I plea for a conception of health as a global public good. And I think that to promote this, we should reinvent WHO. We should not sideline the organization. Thank you very much.